He doesn't recommend building a second approach, and neither do I. We've used that existing approach for the 45 years that we've owned it, and the people that owned it before that used the same approach. So I would like to avoid building another approach just for that reason. Safety concerns is one of my main ones. And we're putting it in between the gas line, and that's the closest area that we can make it work to stay with the setback of 40 mile, which they want 15 meters minimum. We're at 16 meters. So we're as close of a pinch point kind of thing that we can get to try and make it work for both sides. We're 5 meters away from the center of the actual road lawns. So I'm hoping that you guys can approve it without the approach, and that we can go ahead. We have everything in line, ready to go. So the house is being built as we speak.
Okay. So your uncle has no opposition to putting a right-of-way access easement, registering an access easement there?
He said, do what we got to do.
Okay.
Yeah, he gave us a letter saying he does not object to anything being done there. I don't ever see it happening. I mean, we work together, we farm together, we have land together. So there is no easement, and I'm not subdividing the property. She's just setting the trailer on my property. If she gets married and I don't like the guy, she can move.
Hence the modular.
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm not into rental property.
Okay, I'll open the floor to discussion, but I mean, I think that makes sense going with the registration of an easement. We could put that as a condition, correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we could make that a condition. I do have draft wording for a condition available.
Any other discussion? Lloyd? Beat you. Dan?
Okay. I don't have a problem with the setback, and I understand what you're saying about the approach, but think of the problems that we've had with other properties. And it wasn't within the first couple of years, it was 10 or 15 years later that somebody sold or something happened and it changed. And we actually had people putting bales on the road, people couldn't get into the approach. I understand what you're saying, but we got to watch, because if we get into a big problem when we look back at everything that's happened. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with being close, but I would say we do need the approach.
So the thing, like, I mean, we have access agreements throughout the county. I have one on my property that I allow, when I purchased the property, allowed an access agreement for run a water line, and that doesn't seem to be an issue. I mean,
And I agree, but and that was listed on that property that I'm talking about. I won't say any names, but when the property sold and went to another person that got missed at land titles, and then there's no way of going back, and that's when the access was taken off.
But it's on title. A registration for access is on title.
Sometimes it gets missed. That's what happened in our case.
Really? Okay. Do you want to?
Mr. Chairman, an access agreement, such as a right-of-way or an easement, would be registered on the title, and I believe it should run with the land. So if the quarter section changes hands in the future, that access easement or right-of-way would be still on the title and would still be enforceable.
Lloyd, go ahead.
And the agreement would be between one landowner and another landowner, so it'd be a civil issue to enforce. The county would not be involved with that. But yeah, so it would be a civil issue if enforcement was ever needed, but having the agreement registered on both titles would be very important. Thank you.
So you're saying at this point today, if we say it registers on land titles and it comes back and gets missed in the future, Cypress County is not liable for an access to that property? Because we have to have access to everybody's land.
Through the chair in the development permit, we could replace condition 10 with a requirement to register an easement or right-of-way for access. That would be a condition of approval. That is something that we would ensure would be registered on both titles. It's not something that we would miss because access is very important. Thank you.
So the thing is if, say down the road, what you says happens, then they just simply build another approach at that time? Because it's not like it's landlocked because of this easement?
That is true, yeah.
Lloyd, go ahead.
Yeah, this reminds me of one we had a year ago in Ward 3. Family thing again, and they didn't want to put a separate road or approach in. Anyways, we agreed to get it registered, the easement, and I remember at that time, they said it's transferable with the land. It stays there, so if it's sold, that goes with the title.
Right.
That's what we were told then.
That was the Wholesome Road one?
No, that was,
We did one on the
let's
Wholesome
say
Road.
over by the jackpot.
The jackpot, oh, okay. Okay. I believe we did one at the Wholesome Road too,
And actually, I think there was 2 we did there.
okay,
It was all 2 families wanting to build.
okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Hey, no, as long as we don't get hooked with it in the future, I'm just trying to protect Cypress County on the, so what's the wording gonna be then if we change it over from the approach to?
Okay, through the chair, an alternate condition number 10 would read, the applicant/landowner is required to register an access easement agreement on the Alberta land title for Northwest 3510-3 west of the 4th and Northeast 3410-3 west of the 4th for continued legal and physical access. The agreement is to be registered with Alberta land titles prior to occupancy. Thank you.
I'm good with that if we can add to it that in the future that if there ever is an approach needed, it's up to the landowner to pay for it.
Mr. Chairman, we could add that a future approach would need to be paid for.
that
and
makes sense.
Approved by Public Works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, even for the existing development that's there, you probably should have this easement anyways.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I know families have never fought in the history of humankind, but there's a chance.
It could be the son-in-law, you never know.
I have a trump card in my pocket because we have another parcel between me and my uncle that the fence isn't where it's supposed to be, and the disadvantage would be on his side, not mine. So I always keep a card in my back pocket.
And that would not be the first tangled family web I've heard of either, so.
I mean, I get.
Kayleen, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, maybe further to Dan's comment, what the Gills will have to do is seek their own legal counsel or the service of a surveyor to draft the easement and register it. Perhaps there's a good faith agreement that could be made with the Gills that within that access easement agreement, there's a stipulation that if access changes in the future, the onus is not on the county to provide a new approach. If that could be an agreement that goes into that easement.
I'm good.
That covers everybody, I think. Yeah. Yep.
It gets registered on title along with the easement itself.
Okay, that's win-win. All right, anything else? Motions? Nigel moves? Okay.
Okay, I got one more thing, Wade. Because of the deadline and everything to get the trailer moved out, I am going to go ahead, if you approve this, with construction to get the pilings and the septic field and everything done. I will go ahead with getting the easement set up to get that done, but it might not get done before everything else needs to be done. Is that going to be allowed?
Do you want to address that, Aaron?
Mr. Chairman, technically, there's a 21-day appeal period where an adjacent property owner could theoretically appeal this application. Any work done by the applicant on this site prior to that 21-day appeal period would be at his or her own risk. And if there is an appeal, construction or any development would have to stop immediately.
Okay, I'm fine with that because I'm 100% sure there won't be an appeal. That will mean anything. I might have an idiot neighbor way gone away somewhere that thinks he wants to throw a hitch into this.
Never say
program.
never.
That's all right. I'm prepared to go to bat with that one.
Never say never. That's one thing we've learned, right? Okay, so Nigel moves approval with the amended as read Okay, we're all clear on that? Everybody's clear on that? Okay. So Nigel moves approval of development application 2431 with amended conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within that time, the development permit will become valid. If you have any further questions, you may contact the development officer after today's meeting to discuss them. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next point on the agenda is Mr. Cook, Mr. Hoff, Pet Heaven Memorial Gardens, Brian Monroe. Do you have are you guys ready for your presentation? Okay, do you want to take those chairs up front, please? So we know who you are, Brian. If you want to introduce the rest of your party there, that would be good.
Yeah, Daryl Cook, who's, the owner, part owner of the quarter section that we're dealing with.
Okay, so this is subdivision application 23CY14. Kayleen, or Becky, sorry, you want to take that away? Kayleen can do it too if she wants.
I can be Kayleen if you want.
Okay, pretend.
Okay, so as you said, subdivision 23CY14, and this is in Ward 5. The owner of the property is Daryl Cook, Darcy Half, and Pet Haven Memorial Gardens, and the applicant is Brian Monroe. This is located along Range Road 51A, approximately 3 kilometers south of Highway 41A, and approximately 3 kilometers west of Highway 41. This is at Southwest 23-12-5 west of the 4th. And the proposal is to subdivide a 31.35 hectare agricultural parcel, cut off from the remainder of the agricultural title by a coulee system in order to create a separate title for estate planning purposes. This application is intended to subdivide a 31.35 hectare or 77.5 acres agricultural parcel from a previously subdivided quarter section for the purpose of creating a separate title. The proposed subdivision is native prairie and is cut off from the remainder of the agricultural title by a steep coulee system. The proposed subdivision boundary follows the existing fence lines on the parcel. The remainder of the agricultural title contains cultivated cropland and is 25.82 hectares or 63.8 acres in size. The property is located along Range Road 51A near country residential subdivisions and a pet cemetery. The proposed subdivision does not appear to have an existing access approach, however, has the ability to gain access from Range Road 51A. The remainder of the agricultural title gains access from Range Road 52, which is an undeveloped road allowance. There are no oil or gas wells in proximity to the proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision will result in the fourth title to be taken out of the quarter section. The applicant is proposing to consolidate the proposed subdivision area with the existing country residential parcel on the northeast corner. This would reduce the number of titles in the quarter down to 3. On March 5th of 2024, Cypress County Council approved a land use amendment, bylaw 2024-02, for the existing country residential parcel to be amended to Agricultural District 1 ahead of the proposed consolidation. A residence could still be constructed on the remainder of the agricultural title, and the proposed subdivision is located within the rural development area of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan boundary. Under legislation, the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that maintaining an agricultural land base recognizes the value of the agricultural land for sustainable growth and diversification of the agricultural industry, as well as providing an opportunity for expansion for agricultural production in the region. Section 663 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may not require the owner of a parcel of land that is the subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve land or money in place of reserve land if the land to be subdivided is to be subdivided into lots of 16 hectares or more, and is to be used for agricultural purposes. Part 2.9 Road Access of the Subdivision Regulations of the Municipal Government Act states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority to each lot that is created. Section 2.10 Rural Development Area of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan states that the intent of the area is to allow for a variety of land uses that capitalize on the natural attributes of the area where they are compatible with existing land uses, provide on-site sewage disposal systems, and do not require large volumes of potable water. This includes general agricultural operations, excluding CFOs, multi-parcel country residential, farmsteads, and home occupations. Multi-parcel country residential development in this area is preferred to other residential uses. Reduced residential parcel sizes are encouraged to retain the balance of agricultural, extensive recreational, and/or other open space. Section 4.1.20 Land Use Policies of the Municipal Development Plan states that the county may support the subdivision of an agricultural parcel that is fragmented by natural or man-made circumstances as long as the subdivided parcel can demonstrate physical and legal access to a public road, conforms to the minimum parcel size requirements in the land use bylaw, and conforms with the county design guidelines and construction standards. Section 4.1.24, subdivision in the tri-area IDP of the Municipal Development Plan, states that the county shall follow all applicable policies within the tri-area IDP related to the subdivision of the lands within the tri-area IDP boundary. And utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. I'm going to just bring this on Ingrid and give her a minute to find them, but we do have pictures of this site that we'll bring up after the referrals in the 23 CY14 folder. So when we circulated the application, Cypress County Finances replied that the property is subject to a special tax private dust control. The planning supervisor replied that the proposed agricultural subdivision and residential consolidation allows for continued agricultural use on the parcels and complies with the rural development area policy of the Tri-Area Intermunicipal Development Plan, while allowing the landowner to meet their estate planning objectives. Although no development is being proposed at this time, it should be noted that any future development on the parcel in proximity to Ross Creek would be regulated by Section 11.7 of the Land Use Bylaw, setbacks from water bodies, and would be subject to the requirement for the developer to provide an engineered plan detailing that development is outside of the 1 in 100 year floodplain. TELUS Communications replied that they will require a utility right-of-way for the existing facilities that will be crossing from the proposed parcel into the remainder of Southeast 23-12-5 west of the 4th. Please have this requirement added as a condition of approval and have the applicant contact TELUS to initiate the agreement. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objection to the proposed subdivision as described. Fortis replied that they have reviewed the plan and determined that no easement is required. Cypress County Public Works replied that the proposed subdivision has an access approach from Range Road 51A. The rest of the farmland to the west will have direct access off undeveloped Range Road 52. An approach permit is required when any alterations are made to an existing approach or for a new approach. City of Medicine Hat Environment, Land, and Government Relations Department replied that they have provided a map displaying the gas facilities within proximity to the proposed subdivision and offers the following comments. Surface improvements are not permitted within the City of Medicine Hat pipeline utility right-of-way and within 100 meters of any City of Medicine Hat wellhead unless the subdivision or landowner applies to and receives approval from the Alberta Energy Regulator and the city for a setback reduction. Any ground disturbances or surface improvements within 30 meters of any City of Medicine Hat gas pipeline or within 100 meters of any gas wells will require a crossing or proximity agreement. Town of Red Cliff replied that they have reviewed the proposed subdivision as forwarded and offers no comments. The City of Medicine Hat replied that they have no concerns with the proposal at this time. Alberta Historical Resources replied that they have reviewed the subdivision application and determined that in this instance, formal Historical Resources Act approval is not necessary and submission of a Historic Resources application is not required. And at the time of writing this report, no comments or objections were received from any of the adjacent landowners. So just, we tried to get some pictures, and I probably didn't label them, just to show you the coulee system. So I believe this would be looking west, southwest. The pet cemetery would be off to the left, but I probably can't see close enough, but the fence line does follow that coulee system. And this is just looking a little more north. And so this is the access to the pet cemetery, looking north from Range Road 51A. And this is the country residential parcel that the land use amendment was approved for to agricultural district that would be proposed to be consolidated into the agricultural title, or the proposed subdivision that we're speaking of today. So if I move on to my recommendation, it's approval with the following conditions. Number one, the developer is required to consolidate the remnant 0.8 hectare portion contained within Certificate of Title 231150696 with the adjacent agricultural title contained within Certificate of Title 231351000. The consolidation is to be registered in conjunction with the registration of the subdivision plan with Alberta Land Titles. Number two, the developer is required to enter into a municipal services agreement with the county for the construction of an access approach from Range Road 52 to the remainder of the agricultural title. The municipal services agreement is to be executed and registered in conjunction with the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. The developer is required to enter into a utility right-of-way agreement with TELUS. The developer is to provide a copy of the executed agreement to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And number four, the standard condition is the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And that is my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Becky. Would the applicant like to speak to this, their application at this time?
Just a couple of things would tell us, we'd like to get that, must be an underground line there, and I was chatting with Daryl about it, and like if it was on Range Road 52, it would be within the road right away, but it almost seems like it might be over on the west side up that road allowance, and there's a big overhead power line up there, and we know the power line is in that undeveloped road allowance on the west side, so if to tell us right-of-ways there, we're pretty sure it doesn't cross across the quarter section to service any of those homes.
It comes off 51A.
So we'll have to get that verified by TELUS. See what they're talking about. But as far as we know, it doesn't come across. Well, it wouldn't. It would, any TELUS line to service those homes would be on the other road, on the other side, on the east side. So we'd like to get that verified before we register any kind of a right-of-way for maybe no reason. And I think the only other thing would be like access for an access approach. Like when Daryl, Darcy Hoff will be the owner of the north parcel, if I'm correct, right? The cultivation?
Yeah, the cultivation.
And then Daryl, the title will be transferred to him on the pasture land, that's down on the bottom. So there'll be access to the south portion of that from Daryl's residence. I don't know if another one's required down there.
There is an approach off of 51A.
Off of
already,
51A?
An existing. It's just fenced because we don't use it, we use my property.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, but.
You just press the button, it turns red when it's,
There is an existing approach off of 51A onto the pasture land, but it's just fenced to contain the couple of horses because, and a road into the pasture land.
Go ahead, Becky.
Public Works did confirm that there was an approach off of the 51A, so our only concern would be access to the north portion, which the municipal services agreement covers off, that if access is required or development happens, then access would come at that time, but that would get registered on title to cover us off in that case.
Okay, so now this outstanding TELUS right away. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts there?
So I can send the information to the applicant and they can verify with TELUS. And I think if the condition's on there, it covers us off if a right-of-way agreement is required. If it's verified with TELUS that nothing is needed, we would just need written verification of that to satisfy the condition.
Happy with that?
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, I'll open the floor to discussion from the panel. Anything? I have a question. That undeveloped road allowance, 52, is it a passable road allowance from the north?
Yes,
It is.
yeah. Yeah, you can come across the north end of the southeast quarter. You can come across there and come down. It's
Okay.
not all built up or anything, but there's a good trail in there where they bring the farm equipment down to cultivate up top. And then access to the power line right to the top of the coulee.
Amanda?
I can move it.
Okay, Amanda moves. Then we can open the floor to discussion further if there's needed be. Any further discussion needed? But your motion is for the application as presented?
As presented.
With recommendation as presented? Okay. Any discussion, further discussion? Okay. All right, so Amanda moves approval of, make sure I got the right one, of subdivision application 23 CY 14 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and making arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all of the approval conditions and to have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles for the registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you can contact the planner after today's meeting. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, next for consideration is development application 2432. Mr. Lafferty, are you here? Do you want to take one of the chairs up front, please? Okay, so once again, this is development application 24/32. Aaron, do you want to take this away, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The application is for an in-ground pool and covered patio with a variance. The applicant and landowner are both Bill Lafferty. The address of the site is number 10, 11418 Eagle Butte Road. Size of the parcel is 3.88 acres. Zoning is Country Residential District 1. The applicant is requesting approval from Municipal Planning Commission to construct a 22 by 46 in-ground swimming pool with a 660 square foot, 61.3 covered patio. The proposed east side yard setback for the covered patio is 20 feet, 6.1 meters. All the proposed setbacks for the pool and the covered patio comply with section 6.12 of the land use bylaw. The proposed pool is an in-ground structure that is not counted towards the floor area of accessory buildings under the land use bylaw. While the area of the proposed 660 square foot, 61.3 square meter covered patio meets the maximum building area of an individual accessory, 287 square feet, 26.7 square meters for the total floor area of accessory buildings was granted by MPC in December 2021 as DP 21/251. Taking the previous variance into account, the proposed increase in total floor area of all accessory structures proposed by this application is 640 square feet, 59.5 square meters. The subject site is located at number 10, 11418 Eagle Butte Road. And as said before, it's zone CR1 in the land use bylaw. The site is bounded to the west, east, and south by other parcels zoned CR1, and the lands directly to the north of the site are zoned Agriculture District 2. In accordance with Section 16.61 of the land use bylaw, the Development Authority shall review each development permit based on its merit and determine its compliance with the bylaw. In compliance with Section 640.6, the Development Authority can grant variances to the land use bylaw as long as the proposed development does not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with the affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land. And the proposed development also needs to conform with the land use district that it's located in. Land use bylaw review. Section 6.12 of Land use bylaw 22/09 under the Country Residential District 1 states the total building area for each accessory structure shall not exceed 1,600 square feet, 148.6 square meters. The area of the proposed covered patio is 660 square feet, 61.3 square meters, which is under the maximum for an individual accessory structure. However, Section 6.12 of the Land Use Bylaw states the maximum building area of all accessory structures is 2,800 square feet, 260.12 square meters. The total building area of all existing and proposed above-ground accessory structures on the subject site is proposed to be 3,727 square feet, 346.2 square meters. After taking the previous variance granted by the MPC into account, this application is proposing a variance of 640 square feet, 59.2 square meters. Our referrals, we circulated this to the 40 Mile Gas Co-op, and they had no objections to the proposed development. If you look at your package on page 24, the applicant did submit some photos and also emails from the adjacent property owners in support of this application. Our recommended motion is refusal due to the fact that the total site coverage of all accessory buildings on the site exceeds the maximum of 2,800 square feet, 260.12 square meters, as stated in the Land Use Bylaw 22/09, Section 6.12. We also have an alternative motion where the application is approved and the conditions are standard up until 8, where we grant a variance for 640 square feet. I did take some photos on my site visit a few weeks ago, and here we are looking east. That's the current above-ground pool, which is being replaced with an in-ground pool. Looking east, and there's the proposed site over on the left. North again, we're looking at the proposed construction site. And we're looking southeast towards neighboring property. Looking south, which at the residence on the site, and then we're looking west. The site is surrounded by trees, and that concludes my presentation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Mr. Lafferty, would you like to speak to your application at this time? So you can just press the button, it turns red. Yep.
I can read my letter of intent there that I enclosed. I don't know if you guys read it or not.
Yeah, we've all read it.
You have?
We have, yeah.
Okay. That's all the additional information I have.
Okay.
Open to questions on it.
Okay, I'll open the floor to discussion.
I'll move it.
Dan moves approval. Any further discussion before we ask a question? That's it? What's that? I have one question. Do we have any other site occupancy relaxation such as this in that area? Is it out there? My question.
Mr. Chairman, I did do some background research. We do have a lot of oversized shops in the area. I did not do any calculations regarding adjacent properties, but on number 8, which is directed to the south, this information that we had from a previous MPC meeting shows a shop being 2,400 square feet, which is quite large. And then in this area, there's other shops that are 2,000 square feet, 2,400 square feet, 2,400 square feet, 2,016 square feet. But those are the areas just for shops. I don't think this map includes all the other accessory buildings on those other sites. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all the questions I have. So, okay, so Dan moves approval of development application 2432 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So your development permit has been approved, subject to meeting conditions which were previously discussed. The county will mail you a copy of your development permit. Since this is a discretionary use, there's now a 3-week appeal period that the public may appeal the issuance of this permit. The permit will be advertised in the Cypress Courier newspaper for a duration of 3 consecutive weeks. If no appeal is filed within that time, the permit will become valid. If you have any further questions, you can talk to the development officer after today's meeting to discuss them. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, so next, our 1045 is subdivision application 24CY02. Brian, are you here on that? No? Okay.
Good morning. I'm Courtney Tripp, an Alberta land surveyor with Midwest Surveys, and
Okay.
I applied on behalf of my client, Bradley Haas, and reviewed the application with Becky. And I've been through this, and we ask that you approve the application where we have no problems with the conditions that Becky has suggested.
Okay, so Becky, would you like to read over this application, please?
I would love to. So this is in Ward 1, and it's subdivision 24CY02. And as Mr. Tripp has indicated, the owner is Bradley Haas, and the applicant is Midwest Surveys. This is located on Range Road 11A, adjacent to the hamlet of Hilda, on the north half of 3517-1 west of the 4th. The proposal is to subdivide a 5.5 hectare parcel containing an existing residence and farm site to create a separate title. The application is intended to subdivide 4.3 hectares agricultural parcel from an unsubdivided quarter section, certificate of title 891098536A, and to subdivide 1.2 hectares from a previously subdivided quarter section, certificate of title 891098536. The purpose of the proposed subdivision is to create a farmstead separation for the existing residence and yard site. The remainder of the agricultural title contains cultivated cropland and is 63.4 hectares or 156.7 acres and 7.6 hectares or 18.74 acres in size. There are no oil or gas wells in proximity to the proposed subdivision. The proposed subdivision area accommodates an existing yard which currently encroaches over property line and includes an existing residence, detached garage, shops, corrals, grain bins, water well, a dugout, and private access road. The property is currently connected to the hamlet of Hilda Water and utilizes a septic tile field. The proposed subdivision gains direct and immediate access from an existing approach from Range Road 11A or Railway Avenue. It appears that the remainder of the ag title does not have an access approach. Therefore, the Municipal Planning Commission, as a condition of subdivision approval, may need to consider a subdivision approval condition for the installation of a road approach to the remnant parcels. However, I do have a note there that we did take the long drive out to Hilda about a week ago, and we did determine that there are multiple existing access approaches to both remnant agricultural titles. The proposed subdivision will result in the first title to be taken out of the Northwest 3517-1 west of the 4th, and the third title from the Northeast 3517-1 west of the 4th. A residence could still be developed on the remainder of the agricultural titles. The proposed subdivision is located outside of the hamlet, or the Hilda hamlet boundary. The South Saskatchewan Regional Plan states that municipalities are to identify their agricultural land and to limit fragmentation and conversion to non-agricultural uses. Under the implementation section of the plan, section 5, efficient use of land, it states that the land use framework promotes approaches to reduce the amount of land that is taken up by permanent or long-term development by utilizing the minimum amount of land necessary. Section 663 of the Municipal Government Act states that a subdivision authority may not require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve if one lot is to be created from a quarter section of land. As this is the first parcel out of the Northwest 3517-1 west of the 4th, reserve would not be required in this instance. Section 6661 states that a subdivision authority may require the owner of a parcel of land that is subject of a proposed subdivision to provide reserve. Money in place of reserve is recommended on the subdivided parcel from the Northeast 3517-1 west of the 4th. Part 2.9 Road Access of the Subdivision Regulations of the Municipal Government Act states that every proposed subdivision must provide direct access to a road or lawful means of access satisfactory to the subdivision authority for each lot that is created. Section 4.1.21 Land Use Policies of the Municipal Development Plan states that the county may support the subdivision of an existing farmstead or single vacant parcel if the following conditions are met. The agricultural parcel remains the balance of the quarter section. The subdivision will not impact or hinder the agricultural use on the balance of the quarter section. The subdivision parcel size for an existing farmstead is based on the area incorporating the farm dwelling and the accessory buildings and structures, unless there are physical or topographic features which define a more practical, larger parcel. The subdivision of the existing farmstead or single vacant parcel retain the same agricultural land use district as the remnant. Both the existing farmstead or single vacant parcel and the remnant agricultural parcel have direct or a shared easement access to the existing municipal road network or provincial highway. The Municipal Planning Commission may wish to consider as a condition of subdivision approval the consolidation of the remnant agricultural title within the Northwest 35 and the Northeast 35. And utility easements may be required between the proposed parcel and the remainder of the agricultural title. We circulated the application and got some comments back. So Cypress County Finances replied that there are no local improvements associated with the properties. Planning and Development replied that the proposed subdivision is intended to subdivide an existing residence and yard site and is the first parcel to be subdivided from the Northwest 35. The consolidation of the area contained in Northeast 35 ensures that there is both legal and physical access to the subdivision from Range Road 11A. The proposed parcel area complies with the maximum subdivision area for a farmstead in the land use bylaw of 16 acres and complies with the subdivision farmstead provisions of the Municipal Development Plan and is consistent with other similar approvals which have been granted in the past. Cypress County Public Works replied that they have no comments. Cypress County Utilities replied that there are raw water lines located to the west and south of the proposed parcel and need to be located to ensure there is no interference. In addition, the treated water line runs on the west side of Range Road 11A and might possibly interfere with access approaches. There may be encroachments or utility right-of-way required depending on the intent of the land use, and the developer should contact the utility supervisor for specifics on this. TELUS Communications replied that they have no concerns with the proposed activities. Fortis Alberta replied that easements are required for this development. The developer can initiate the process of securing an easement for the proposed subdivision by contacting nobody, I guess, but that would be Fortis. Apex Utilities replied that they have no objections to the proposed subdivision. Canlin Energy replied that they have reviewed the application and they have no concerns. And the Cypress County Assessor provided a market value assessment rate of $18,988.34 per hectare for money in place of municipal reserve purposes. So that takes me to my recommendation, and that is approval with the following conditions. So number one, the developer is required to make a payment to the county for money in place of municipal reserve for 1.23 hectares at a rate of $1,898.83 per hectare, being 10% of the appraised market value of $18,988.34 per hectare. The payment is to be submitted to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number two, the developer is required to consolidate the remnant 6.35 hectare portion contained within Certificate of Title 891098536 with the adjacent agricultural title contained within Certificate of Title 891098536A. The consolidation is to be registered in conjunction with the registration of the subdivision plan with Alberta Land Titles. Number three, the developer is required to enter into an easement agreement with Fortis Alberta. The developer is required to provide a copy of the executed easement agreement to the county prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. Number four, the developer is required to provide written verification from Cypress County Utilities that all requirements, including agreements, have been complied with prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And number five, the standard condition, the developer is required to supply copies of any utility right-of-way plans, easements, or agreements which are to be registered as a requirement for any affected utilities to Cypress County prior to the subdivision's registration with Alberta Land Titles. And that is my report.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. Tripp, would you like to speak to any of these conditions?
No, I'm fine. Brad and I are fine with these conditions.
Okay. I'll open the floor to discussion. Michelle?
I don't have any discussion. I've known Brad my entire life, and I think it's about time he did this, so I'll move approval.
Okay. Any further discussion? Michelle's moved approval of the. I don't think an amalgamation of the parcels as discussed is anything that I think should be done. I don't know if there's any further discussion from the Planning Commission on that. I think it's fine the way it sits.
Yeah.
Okay? Right. Yeah. Well, just discussed. I don't think it was formally proposed. It was just an option.
Yeah, we proposed it as a condition, but of course that's up to the Municipal Planning Commission if they deem that necessary.
My understanding, Becky, was that it was because of access. We wanted to make sure we had access across that parcel over to the northwest. Is that
Yeah, at the time we were talking access, we weren't aware of any of the other approaches. It also reduces the number of titles and puts ag into ag, so we're always in favor of that. But like I said, it's up to the Municipal Planning Commission.
Okay. That's my mistake. I apologize. Thank you for catching it. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to amalgamate those parcels. I mean, I don't understand the rationale for it, but I mean, I know it's been done in the past, but I don't know what the rest of the Planning Commission. Go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I can just interject, if Mr.
well,
Tripp could use his mic.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, please. Yeah, press the button.
It takes some additional surveying, field work, and so the additional costs to my client are $2,000 or $3,000. So if you could see past that, then we'd be fine either way. Brad has the $2,000 or $3,000.
I mean, the amalgamation is I understand the intent of it, and it's, so I'll like I said, I'll open up the floor to any further discussion regarding that. But Dan, do you have input there?
I just believe that staff has got it in for a reason, and we should follow what they're trying to put through, so I don't, either way doesn't matter, but there's got to be a reason why staff is doing it that way, so.
So the last consideration I saw that amalgamation made perfect sense, otherwise I wouldn't have been in favor of that. I mean, it's a small agricultural parcel. Is there a rationale that it was behind the decision to include that as a condition?
Well, Kayleen can correct me if I missed the mark at all, but I think just being that it would be a remnant small agricultural parcel like you indicated next to the hamlet, it just made sense that the two went together. But
It also alleviates, Mr. Chairman, the narrow strip that runs north up to Township Road 180. It alleviates that narrow strip and potential long-term issues if any type of use was ever to be proposed in there. So it's simply just proposing to clean up the titles that are within those quarter sections.
Okay. So the motion is as stands? Okay, all right, so we'll move forward with the question. Okay, Michelle moves approval of subdivision application 24CY02 with conditions as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so your subdivision has been approved, subject to meeting the conditions which were previously discussed. The county will now mail you a copy of your subdivision approval. You're advised to begin working towards completing the necessary conditions and make arrangements to have the approved subdivided area surveyed if you have not already done so. You have 1 year from the subdivision's approval date to have met all the approval conditions and have the survey plan submitted to Alberta Land Titles for the registration of the separate title. If you have any further questions, you can contact the planner after today's meeting. Thank you very much. Need a break, is that? Regarding the planner's report, do you have any input, Kayleen, that you want to present? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think just the only other item to add is maybe an update on our open houses that we hosted Thursday, Friday, and Saturday last week. We had fantastic turnout for 2 out of 3 of the open houses. We're very impressed. We did this a little bit differently this time. We actually attempted to go out to the communities to see if that would garner any additional input, and I think that it did that. So we're looking forward to bringing back some of the information that we gathered to council and then drafting some potential amendments going into the summer. And then we'll go back out to the community again with actual red line changes that we're proposing. Yesterday, Aaron represented the county and the Municipal Planning Commission at a Land and Property Rights Tribunal hearing. So there was, of course, an appeal made against the Weber gravel pit expansion on Township 120. Aaron knocked it out.
I have nothing else. Another question? Amanda? Amanda moves approval of the planner's report as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Next meeting is May 14th. One more thing I'd like to address. I understand this is Kim Dalton's last meeting. I would like to thank you personally and for your years of input and sound decision advice. I think you've been a real asset to Planning Commission, and I've enjoyed your presence here. So, and best of luck with your future endeavors. Thank you. Anybody else leaving?
Yeah.
Okay, I adjourn the meeting.